Well, revelations about abortionist Kermit Gosnell in Philadelphia shocked the nation. We learned about live births, live babies being dismembered, being murdered. He was ultimately found guilty of 8 counts of murder. He's serving a life sentence. But what you may not realize is that this is not an isolated incident. This is happening throughout the country. A well-documented case is right here in Texas. We have 3 witnesses who have come forward to talk about the similar practices at a Houston abortion clinic, and yet after 5 months, there's been no investigation yet. And we're talking to someone who's breaking this story. This is Mark Crutcher. He is with Life Dynamics. He's created an extensive litigation support system that helps women sue abortionists who kill, injure, or sexually assault them. He's also a documentary film producer. We carry his films here at InfoWarsStore.com. Mafia 21 is a very powerful film about the roots of the abortion industry, the roots of eugenicism. Joining us today is Mark Crutcher. Welcome, Mark. It's good to have you here.
It is my pleasure. Thank you for having me on.
Now, you are you've produced a wonderful documentary, Mafia 21, about a horrible subject, black genocide. And what we're seeing now is that, just as Pastor Niemöller pointed out about the Nazis, first they come for one group, then they come for another group. If you don't do anything about it, eventually they're going to come for you. And now we see the abortion eugenicist industry going after everybody. They're not strictly focused on just the black communities. There still is a lot. They're very highly focused and probably more focused on them still, but they're going after everyone now, aren't they?
Well, yeah, everybody is their target, but they are still primarily, even to this day, primarily concerned with the black and now the Hispanic community. The biggest expansion in their eugenics agenda has been toward the Hispanic community, and that's who they're targeting currently. But yeah, our documentary, I think, makes it very crystal clear that the original motivation behind the legalization of abortion had nothing to do with reproductive rights or women's rights or choice or any of that other nonsense that they used to justify it. The original motivation behind the legalization of abortion was to wipe out the black community.
That's right. Now, the reason we've got you on today is we've got some breaking news right here in Texas. People who have looked at the trial of Gosnell in Philadelphia were amazed to learn what was going on in those abortion clinics, even though you and many others have been pointing this out for quite some time. We have a similar situation that's been developing here in Texas, and you've been on this from the very beginning. Tell us a little bit about this.
Yeah, to refresh everybody's memories, one of the issues in the Gosnell situation was that he was inducing these women to give birth to live babies who were coming in to have abortions, and then he would kill the baby outside the womb. And we were able to gather information that the same exact thing is going on in Texas. And I can tell you it's going on all over the country. This is not relegated to Pennsylvania or in Texas. But we were able to get interviews with 3 employees of an abortion clinic in Houston run by an abortionist named David Carpin. And the same things are going on there. I mean,
let's take a look, Mark, at this video that you got of these witnesses that came forward and talked to you about it. You filmed it. Let's let them describe exactly what happened.
You see the baby alive?
Yes, sir.
And him kill that baby outside the womb?
Yes, sir.
And this would be done by jamming some sort of instrument into the
either that or
soft spot?
Or actually twisting the head off the neck, kind of with his own bare hands.
And you saw that happen?
Yes, sir.
So he would twist the head off. I'm sorry.
Sometimes he would go through the stomach as well.
Sometimes he would do what?
He would force it through the stomach.
The instrument, is it beards?
And twist it.
Yeah.
And you saw that?
Anything that he could get to the fastest, like she said, the umbilical. He was probably perforating the umbilical cord. I normally saw either the snipping of the spine or the introduction of the instrument in the soft spot of the fetus normally, or twisting of the neck.
I remember he would put his finger.
Yeah, or his finger. He'd take his finger and then
through the throat.
Yeah.
That's just horrific stuff. I mean, we're looking at them poking their fingers through their throat, through the soft spot in their head, twisting their heads off. This is what they're saying is going on in this abortion clinic. As you point out, this is going on in other abortion clinics. What happened after you got to these witnesses? Well, you gave this information, you turned this over to state authorities.
Well, we first turned it over to, we made it public, and of course, people aren't going to, and nor should they, act on edited material. So we were going to make the unedited, complete interview available to law enforcement. And we did that through a state representative named Phil King, and we provided him with the raw, unedited footage, which he then provided to the homicide division of the Houston Police Department. Because understand something, even by the liberal and abortion laws, which the country operates under currently, what these women are describing is a murder,
Yes.
or multiple murders, and sometimes multiple murders occurring on the same day.
Mm.
And so this information was then turned over to the authorities, and supposedly a criminal investigation was launched. And we haven't heard anything yet. I've been one of the people who's been urging the pro-life community to be patient, that homicide investigations can take a long time, and so let the Houston police do their job and stand down. Don't be poking your finger in their eye, and don't be assuming that nothing's going to be done. Let the thing run its course. I'm beginning to get the sense now, however, after all these months, we released this information and turned it over to the police back in May, and here we are in the 1st of November, and not a peep.
That's right.
And I'm beginning to get suspicious that the fix may be in.
Now, you sent this to not only to Representative King, but then he put together a letter and sent this to the Homicide Division of the Houston Police. He sent it to the Texas Medical Board. He sent it to the Commissioner of the Texas Department of State Health Services. And these letters were co-signed by 20 Texas lawmakers. And yet, have any of these three organizations contacted you about information?
Not one.
Okay.
We haven't heard a peep.
Mm.
And, the Houston, one thing that people need to understand is you've got a mayor in Houston who's an open and practicing lesbian. Everybody knew that when they elected her. She's raging pro-abort. Her lover is a former board member of Planned Parenthood, as I understand. I know she has some connections to Planned Parenthood, the nation's #1 abortionist.
Actually, she's her partner, Kathy Hubbard, is actually campaign treasurer for Planned Parenthood of Houston and for Southeast Texas Action Fund PAC. So there's actually some ethical questions that have been raised in the past. I don't know if those are still outstanding or if they've been resolved, but there were ethical questions about her relationship to Planned Parenthood via her partner. And her challenger now for the next election, Ben Hall, said that the city of Houston is a victim of a mayor who is a shakedown artist. And he pointed out just in the first 6 months of this year, 2013, there were 54 contributors who gave $775,000 to her, and they received $65 million in contracts. That's a pretty good return on investment. That's about $86 back for every dollar that they gave to her.
Absolutely. And, this... I don't want to say right now that the fix is in, but I'm getting suspicious that that's what's happening. Mm-hmm. And I'll tell you something, David, that makes me very suspicious about this. Is we released this information the day after Gosnell was sent to prison in Pennsylvania. Mm-hmm. Now, if you're Doug, and I said earlier his name was David Carpin. It's not. It's Douglas Carpin. If you're Douglas Carpin, and you've just seen one of your colleagues go to jail for the rest of his life because his employees came forward worried that they were going to go to jail and basically ratted him out. And now 3 of your employees are becoming public. Mm-hmm. My first thought was, this guy's going to run. If I'm this guy and I've got the millions of dollars in the bank that he clearly does, he lives in a $4 million house. If I've got his kind of money, and I'm looking at this situation unfolding in front of me, I'm going to be on the next plane to a country that doesn't have an extradition document with the United States.
Yeah.
Or
you're going to take some of that money and you're going to buy some influence with a mayor who already has close ties to Planned Parenthood and who's shown that you can get places with when you make campaign contributions to her, right?
And you're talking to someone in law enforcement there who's saying, "Don't worry about it. Don't worry about it, Douglas. We got it covered. You don't need to flee."
Yeah.
I am very suspicious when this man didn't take off instantly. I became suspicious at that time. But again, I told everyone, let's just keep our powder dry. Stay quiet. Let the police do their job. Don't be, like I said, poking your finger in their eye. But at this point, we're talking about all these many months later, when you've got clear evidence. You got 3 witnesses to first-degree murders, and nothing has happened, and the guy's still hanging around, I'm beginning to get a little bit.
You know, Mark,
more
what I see with this, it's difficult sometimes for people to get their heads around the real issue, the fundamental issues involved. I know we had the NSA. A lot of people say, well, you know, if I don't have anything to hide, so I don't really mind if they're looking at my telephone. And yet we had a comedian go around, and he would hold a boom mic over people's heads, dressed in a suit, looking like a government agent with sunglasses. And the minute he would do that, they instinctively were repelled by that. They instinctively understood what was wrong with somebody standing around recording their private conversations. I'm sure they were talking about things that are perfectly innocent, but it was an offense to them. The same thing happens with these fully developed children, these late-term abortions or these murders after these children are born. And yet, what people don't really understand is that this isn't just the outrage, and it is an outrage. It's not to minimize the horrific crimes of Gosnell and this doctor in Houston. But what people don't realize is that it's just as outrageous when they do it a month before or 2 months before, 3 months before. I've heard a doctor talk about how he took a fetus out that was very, very tiny, fit in the palm of his hand. He said it was a perfectly formed little child wiggling around in his hand. He snipped the umbilical cord, and he said it just looked like a piece of plastic after that. People see these fetuses in jars, they don't make the connection to a child that has fingerprints, a beating heart, all the aspects of a human being, even a different blood type in many cases than the mother. Half the time it's a female child, half the time it's a male child. It's a unique individual, and yet people can't make that connection.
Yeah, and that's a good point that you make, David, because in the case, I've had people say, well, this is horrific. They're killing live babies.
Yes.
Well, the babies were live anyway.
Yes.
And the issue here is not, if you think about it for a minute, when you have all these people get all upset, they're saying, well, these babies are coming out of these women and they're kicking around, they're live, and these women are talking about twisting their heads off. But if you were to be able to put that baby back into the womb and do the same thing, then it's just an abortion.
Absolutely.
And this is going on everywhere, all over the country, and at some point, you know really what it is, David, is intellectual dishonesty. Mm-hmm. Because these people know that that's the truth. If you're going to get outraged by these babies being killed outside the womb, but be perfectly comfortable with them being killed inside the womb, there's something wrong with you.
Yes, yes. You know, I had my aha moment was with what they call partial birth abortion, which was a bunch of nonsense. It really was essentially the same thing that's going on here, except that they removed the baby partially and said that, well, since it's partially in the womb, we're going to call it an abortion instead of a murder. That was my aha moment. Prior to that, I wanted to kind of take a libertarian point of view and say, you know what, the government needs to just stay out of this completely, let people make up their minds as to when a child is alive or not. Once that came up, I realized these people had a very different agenda. I didn't know at that time about the eugenics agenda that was going on, that really is the overriding issue here. But I knew at that point they were being intellectually dishonest. Hopefully when people look at these trials like Gosnell, when they look at what's going on here with this doctor in Houston, they're going to understand, as we pointed out, that there isn't really any difference. Alex had us go out and talk to people on the street about doing abortions of 3-year-olds. You know, where do you draw the line? You know, if you can abort your child right after it's born, can't you abort a 3-year-old? And now we see, just in the last couple of days, we've seen that they're talking about euthanizing children. It's not just old people. It's not just adults who are going to euthanize children. Well, of course, the principle is essentially the same. And the principle is the same whether you're aborting a 3-year-old, you're aborting a 3-minute-year-old, or whether you're aborting a baby that is 3 minutes before coming out of the womb. There's really not that much difference, but maybe we can wake people up if they really see this, just like people wake up when they see somebody with a boom mic standing over their head recording their conversations. They understand the importance of privacy. Maybe we can get people to understand the importance of life.
Well, I'm confident that we are at one point. We look back on things like the German Holocaust, or we look at slavery, and we say today, how could people do that? And how could other people think about it and stand around and not do anything while it's going on? I'm going to tell you right now, David, there is going to come a time in history when they look back on this time and look at the abortion issue and say, how the devil could these people stand around and let that go on?
Yes.
How could one human being do that to another one and other human beings know about it and keep their mouths shut? And, you know, everybody, when you say that to people, inevitably you get this, oh, yeah, you're being outrageous. That's, you know, this is not a Holocaust. This is not anything similar to what those other things were. But the fact is that anybody who's involved in a Holocaust like this doesn't believe it's like the previous Holocaust. That's the nature of it.
That's right. That's right.
You
And
could
people are
probably-
going to realize in the future, they're going to realize what the real eugenics agenda was behind this, just as people now realize what Hitler was doing, because that is the real agenda behind that. That's the broader agenda, and it's not just abortion, it's in other areas as well. But you pointed that out wonderfully in your documentary, MAFA 21. And Mark, we want to keep up on this, what's happening in Houston, so we want to keep in touch with us. Let us know how this is developing. We're going to be following this story.
Well, you let me know anytime I can come on, and I'll be happy to update you.
Will do. Thank you so much for your work.
Thank you, David.
Bye-bye.